So how do you get rid of negative thoughts and improve self-esteem? That's this week's topic, because every minute of every day, our brain keeps searching for the next thought. There's no pause button. It's called self-talk. And in this video, I'm going to share how you can use self-talk to get rid of your negative thoughts and actually improve how you feel about yourself so that you can have a better quality of life, because our thoughts create our reality. But first, my name is Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships that work. And don't forget to stay until the end, where I give you a bonus tip on a super easy way to change negative thoughts to positive. So what is self-talk? Self-talk is basically a running dialogue inside your head that goes 24/7. It's your own commentary of your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions that you never really share out loud, and it goes 24/7. Some of us are aware of this and some of us aren't. And I think the biggest surprise most people have with self-talk is that they don't realize how much that impacts their life. Because when it's positive, you feel really great and life is going relatively well. When it's negative, you may not realize how much that's impacting the quality of your life. So I'm going to share how you can combat and get rid of those thoughts so that you can feel better about yourself and create a happier life. So what's the difference between positive self-talk and negative self-talk? Well, it's the focus. When our self-talk, our thoughts, our feelings are focused on what's working, what we're hopeful for, what we're grateful for, then we tend to feel better about things, because our thoughts create feelings and feelings create behavior. So it's really important to be able to identify those thoughts. Now, when self-talk is negative, that's when we're focusing more on what isn't working. We're really in fear, worry, we're making a lot of negative assumptions about ourselves, about life in general, about how people feel about us. And that, of course, is going to make an impact in our day as well. So here's what it looks like. You wake up one morning ready to take a trip. You're really excited, you're thinking about all the things you're going to be doing, the people you're going to be seeing, the time off you get, and you're really excited and raring to go. You end up having a really nice trip. Here's another example. You wake up dreading the trip and you're focusing on, oh, I really don't like to fly, or man, I really don't like to eat out that much, I really can't afford it. And you end up getting to that trip feeling like, ugh, I don't even want to be here. So what's the difference in those scenarios? The thoughts. The person who was positive woke up focused on what they were looking forward to and what they were excited about. The person who didn't focused on what wasn't going right. So what ends up happening is those thoughts create a chain reaction of fear. So when we get stuck in negative self-talk, one negative thought feeds the other. And before we know it, we're in a lousy mood. Another example of this is, have you ever gone throughout your day and all of a sudden you're in a really bad mood and you don't know why? Usually why that happens is you've had a negative or fearful thought and you didn't even recognize it. All of a sudden you had a thought of worrying about money or worrying about your partner or something that shifted your mood. So part of why I'm doing this video is because I want you to be aware of how powerful your thoughts are and just how easy it is to actually start to shift that. Now, if you've ever had negative self-talk, I want you to say yes in the comments, because all of us struggle with this. This is something we all have, but a lot of us don't realize how much negative self-talk we have until we identify it. And that's the first step in changing it. We need to identify exactly what those thoughts are. What are you telling yourself? For instance, some common things might be, I can't handle it, or I'm never enough, or I'm not as good as so-and-so, or life isn't fair, or nothing ever works out for me. People aren't to be trusted. Those are all negative self-talk statements, whether they're about you or life in general. I do a deep dive in this in my Calming Your Anger class, because there's such a connection between what we tell ourselves and how we feel emotionally. So part of what I want you to do is get a piece of paper and I want you to write down, what are those thoughts that come up for you the most that are really negative? And the thing is when we're in this first step, I don't want you to judge yourself, because it's really easy to do that and say to yourself, oh my God, I shouldn't be saying this to myself. This is awful. And sometimes it can take you by surprise and be quite shocking, because again, it's an internal conversation that we never share with anybody else. So these thoughts can be really nasty. So the second step in getting rid of negative thoughts, I want you to clarify where they came from. This is super important. It's one thing to identify your negative self-talk, but we have to trace it back to where it came from. And the reason why this is so important is because often our self-talk is created through our life experience, especially in our childhood. Because as we're growing up, our parents and our caregivers have a major role in developing our self-talk. Because what children do is children tend to adapt to what they know. If you came from a family where, say, people aren't to be trusted, or you shouldn't shine or be noticed, it's better to stay in the background. Those will impact your self-talk. How could it not, right? Because we grow up 18 years in a family and their beliefs end up becoming our beliefs. So part of what I want you to do is look at where your self-talk started, especially with your family. What messages did you get growing up? Were you enough? Were you praised? What criticisms did you get? What were those messages about being a boy or being a girl that you got, or being enough? Because all of those things create our self-talk. Whether some of us were told we were lazy, we'd never amount to anything, or you would only be valuable if you took care of others and put yourself last. Those are very common beliefs that lead to negative self-talk. Other experiences that impact self-talk are any issues of trauma or abuse. Maybe you had a coach or a teacher that stood out for you, whether that was negative or positive. All of those experiences end up creating our self-talk as adults. So the reason this is important is because if you can identify where your self-talk messages came from, then you can give them back. Because our self-talk, especially when it's negative, is usually adopted from other people. So part of why this is so powerful is that we need to recognize that part of our self-talk doesn't belong to us. It belongs to other people. Because when parents, caregivers, coaches, when they say negative or hurtful or abusive things, that's really more about them and their own struggles than who you are as a person. And being able to separate that and detach from these messages because they weren't yours anyway, they were actually inherited, that's going to be one way you can reclaim your own self-talk, by realizing that some of these messages isn't necessarily true. Because if these negative thoughts aren't yours, why are you keeping them? Right? And if you can relate, say ditto in the comments, because if you've grown up with any type of negative self-talk like I have, you know how painful this is. And you know that if you can only identify and start to work with these thoughts and change them, you're going to feel so much better. Because even though we can't control our first thought, we can absolutely control the second one. Because we all have random, weird first thoughts that we can't control. But the minute you notice that first negative thought, I want you to change it. So what I want you to do is challenge these thoughts. And how you do that is you ask yourself this question: is this thought true? Because if you're telling yourself something like, I'm worthless, or I'm not as good as so-and-so, I want you to really challenge that thought and say, is it true? Because most likely it's not. It's based in fear and worry and misinformation. That's what negative self-talk is typically built on, is things you've said, things you've heard about yourself growing up that you adopted to be part of your self-esteem, and they don't work anymore. And when we're telling ourselves really negative things, they're probably not true, because they're usually absolutes, like I can't handle this, or nothing is ever going to work out for me, or I'm not lovable. Part of getting rid of negative self-talk and negative thoughts is being able to challenge these thoughts as being untrue, okay? Because you're not a bad person. You're not lazy. You're not too sensitive. Those are messages that were given to you by other people because they couldn't handle it. It was more their issue of not being able to deal with stress or not being able to parent effectively. And that's what we need to realize in our self-talk, is that these messages don't belong to you anymore. And I want you to give them back. So another thing I want you to remember when you're challenging these thoughts is that feelings aren't facts, okay? If you feel bad about yourself, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But it does mean that there are some feelings there that need to be worked out. So sometimes that's worth getting a therapist, can really help, because part of what we need to do is to look and honor our own feelings and our own experience. And negative self-talk often is rooted in trauma and really painful childhood experiences that need to heal. But this is how you can heal it for yourself, by challenging those thoughts. And the next step in that is replacing them. So if you're saying something to yourself like, I'm not lovable, the message becomes, I am lovable, or I think I'm lovable. Now, the reason I add I'm think is because for positive self-talk statements to work, they have to feel true to you. So what I want you to do is, when you're creating positive self-talk statements, you have to create statements that are true to you. So this is where you might add statements like, maybe I am okay, maybe I am enough, maybe I can trust other people, because I want your brain to accept the positive self-talk. So for instance, sometimes the reason why positive self-talk doesn't work is we use statements that our brain rejects. I am lovable. If you say that to yourself and inside you're going, nope, that's not true at all for me, it's not going to work. So you need to find an easier statement that your brain is going to say, yeah, you know what, that's okay, I am a good person. Or maybe I am okay. Maybe what they told me about myself is wrong. Those are some baby steps that you can change your self-talk to align with who you are today. So some examples of positive self-talk might be, I can do this. Everything is going to be okay. Trust the process. Sometimes you can use 12-step statements like let go and let God, or one day at a time, I can do this. Anything that feels comforting and safe and positive and loving. Those are the statements I want you to work on. Another way to create positive self-talk is to write a gratitude list. Write all the things you're grateful for, your health, your friends, your education, your job, all those things that you don't necessarily think about on a daily basis, but they really are things to be grateful for. And that can be a way to shift that negative self-talk into something more positive. So the last bonus tip I'm going to give you about the easiest way to create positive self-talk is think of the compliments you've received over the years, because usually there's a theme. You're kind, you're generous, you're great with kids, you're loving, you're patient. What are those attributes that people always say about you? And that's what I want you to take as your self-talk, because you can build on that as your foundation, because those are inherent traits that people are already noticing about you. So if you really want a deep dive into building your confidence, check out my ebook on the 4 essential steps for building confidence. I'll leave it in the link of this post. Thanks so much.